Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. I am on the road this week, and guess what? So is Tom. That's right, we're both traveling this week, but that can't stop us from bringing you some Warhammery good news.
Hello,
What's up, Tom?
friends. Hi, I'm apparently in the same hotel somewhere else. Clearly a nicer room because my lights look nicer.
I don't know about that. I'm not in like a bedroom. I'm in the extended part of my suite where the kitchenette is, Tom. So how about that?
So friends, we don't know what the internet's going to do to us tonight because both of us have terrible internet. So yeah, it could be a mess, and you guys get to come along for the ride.
Yes, apologies in advance if the internet is terrible. Not do the show because, here it is. But we're on the road, so there you go. Apologies if it sucks. There you go. That's out of the way. Let's start with the news. And don't spin around a whole bunch, Tom, because when you spun around a whole bunch, it got jumpy. You got to stay very still. Don't make your camera work.
Okay. I will only move my lips.
Well, we will both stay exactly like this the entire show, and it won't be disturbing at all.
It'll be super creepy. So, the news this week, we had the Corgus Cole and the that other guy,
Vandus
Hammerhand. Their scrolls dropped to not really much fanfare. Like they were okay. Like I might run one maybe. What was more interesting was the Blood Secretor debacle. Now the Blood Secretor has been reverted to his prior rules before the Blades of Khorne alteration with like the Rage of Khorne. So who knows what's going on? Who knows what's supposed to stack? I don't know. So
yeah, I mean, to me, that was clearly an error. They clearly just missed that text didn't get changed. Surprised that people I thought Vandus was quite good. I liked Vandus quite a bit. He basically has all the things of the normal Lord Celestant on Dracov. But his 24-inch battle shock immunity, as long as he's in the right battalion, becomes perma on, and his normal command ability is pretty ridiculous. Characteristics. He's borrowing from Khorne. He's almost more Khorne than Khorne. In his rules. I thought he was good. And at the same time, the other really interesting thing was, if that he can replace, the normal model, right? So it actually does allow him to slot in. So, if you have a Lords of the Storm battalion as part of your Hammers of Sigmar Warrior Chamber, then Vandus is taken instead of the Lord Celestant on Dracoth, or Celestant on Stardrake.
Yep.
Right. So he can replace all those things. Yeah. I don't know. Seemed pretty good to me. I don't think he has points yet. I mean, that's certainly a problem. Yes, but I mean, I'll agree.
So that means he's unplayable right now in matched play.
Fair enough.
So
I'll grant you that.
You can't evaluate how good he is because we don't know. He could be 100 points overcosted. Yeah. Anyways,
sure.
So that dropped this week. The announcement for a Path of Glory book is coming. Mm-hmm. Probably something I would anticipate like the Skirmish book. But with all the they said that all the Path of Glory forces would be outlined in there. It's intriguing. I'm interested. Tell me more, GW.
Right. Yeah, I think the important parts to me when I looked at, we've only gotten a little hint of this so far.
Yep.
The important parts to me were it actually has the Path to Glory rules for every, right? So no more, famously a lot of people complained because in the GHB, when we originally got the Path to Glory, have all of the armies in there. Now, you could kind of extrapolate, right, and sort of figure out what was roughly the equivalent for your own army, but they weren't all in there. Now they all will be. It tells me, Tom. It tells me that they needed to make some space in GHB2 for other stuff they wanted to include, and so didn't want to reprint all of the Path to Glory stuff. So that won't be in GHB2.
Yeah,
they're not going to release a Path to Glory book. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it's going to be in GHB2. I don't know that it necessarily means that they were trying to clear space, although they probably were. Like,
tell you that as somebody who's often had to find space in books, yanking out an entire thing and clearing what, like, hold that opened up 20 or 30 pages.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. Like, that means they can do a lot of other stuff if they wanted to include more scenarios, which fingers crossed I'm hopeful for, including more multiplayer scenarios. Fingers double crossed, fingers and toes. Then I would love to see that. Yes, please and thank you.
No, that's fair. It was pointed out in the chat, by the way, that Vandus is 280 points in the app and Cole is 200 in the app.
Oh, neat. Okay, I didn't know they were in the app. Hey, nice.
Yeah, I don't know.
You have to think about that.
Yeah, I don't know if they're worth those points. That's what I would say.
280 is a lot.
280 is a lot for like a 7-wound hero, 8-wound hero. That's named that can no longer have items. Like that to me, like
yeah,
that's a problem.
It's a good point. By being a named character, I wonder how much that's taken into account on these things, right? Like, does that figure into the points value? Do they think about that? I don't know. I've never heard them comment on that one way or another. The fact that the unique people can't take items,
or Vandus can't take Staunch Defender, the +1 to saves for him and everybody nearby.
Yeah, sure. It's
that seems like a problem.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if here's what I'll say. I want to reevaluate this guy. I want to reevaluate.
As Paul Wagner appropriately pointed out, the Ragnarok is 280 points.
Well, okay, sure. I'm not sure that Well, let me say I'm not sure that a properly itemed up or kitted out unnamed Lord Celestin on Dracoth doesn't kill a Ragnarok spider. In that match, I'm not sure that the Lord Celestin doesn't come out, especially if he's in his Staunch Defender. Blah, he could be on a super save with a reroll.
Yeah,
when he goes
what rerollable. The spider's bites.
If you trigger the mortal wounds, I understand.
Mortal wounds and blah 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 blah.
I agree. It's a question of whether those mortal wounds trip off or not. Is the fight. And probably also who gets the charge, or how many 6s the Lord Celestin gets to pop off the claws into suddenly being a D6 damage. I'm just saying I think that fight could go either way. That's all I'm saying. That Lord Celestin on Dracoth, the non-named one with his items, gets to be pretty hard.
Yes, it's swingy. That fight is certainly swingy. That's what I would say.
Yes. Yeah. There you
go. So other news. We had a rumor engine.
Yes, we do.
And this is kind of a thing, right? This is not the edge of a cloak. It's the edge of a shoulder pad.
So is that what you're putting your money on, shoulder pad?
Probably not. I mean, it's I don't know what it is.
Really weird one. Certainly the round part does look like a shoulder pad.
And there's
but
ribbon.
It also, right? Clearly it's a black and white image of a painted thing. It's not raw plastic. Right. So I have to assume it's fully assembled.
Right.
Right? I don't think, I think they're just zooming in here. So the question is, what part of the model is this? Sure. Right? Because what I mean is, if it's a shoulder, you switch things.
Yep. Hi.
You can't change your channel. You can't change your focus. You're so bad at sharing, I swear to God.
I am bad at sharing.
So if it's a shoulder, where's the arm? Right? I'll tell you what, the thing it looks like to me is a weird head. Okay? Like a long-necked head.
Really?
Sure. Picture that the head, we're looking at profile. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. So where are the eyes?
And it doesn't have any. I mean, it's an empty face mask. There were a bunch of Rackham models back in the day that are like this. There's been some Spawn that are like this. The new Mistweaver Say is like this, right? There's tons of models with just metal face masks and no eyes. So like, I don't think that that's
could this be a distended jaw?
Yeah, exactly. Like a weird extended jaw. Like, we don't know that there's not a lower row of teeth or something hidden in between those two protrusions, whatever you want to call them, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe.
It's also been pointed out it could be the front of something. Like, some people said maybe the prow of something, but it's too big. Yeah, it's too big. Like, the rivets would be massive, right? Like, this is a very zoomed in image. You can tell by the quality of the paint.
The brush
like
stroke.
This is a heavy metal paint job, and I can see individual brush strokes, and I can see the edge highlighting really clearly. So this is a small thing. Like, this has got to be a normal sized model. Level of detail. Like, I can see the wash stains.
Yep.
How are you so bad at this?
I'm just bad. Sorry.
Oh my God. Take your hand off the mouse pad.
I can't help it. It's late. I drove 15 hours. I woke up last night at 3 in the morning and drove out to the East Coast with like Paul Conti like messaging me the entire way. Like, hey Tom, you're gonna be nearby. You want to roll some dice?
So are you going to go roll some dice? That's the question.
I don't think so.
You are such a loser.
I didn't bring any minis, and I'm at this
You don't need to bring minis. Paul has other armies.
I know. I don't, like, I have other people with me. I'm not going to make them watch me roll dice.
Just tell them to go take care of themselves. All right, anyways, I'm interested. This rumor engine's a real stumper because it's interesting. Like, it's actually something really interesting, but it's not easily identifiable. This is a good rumor engine, right?
No, that's true. That's true.
It could be a lot of different things. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Yep. I think it's like I don't know, it's a shoulder pad for a guy with no arms or something. Sure. Absolutely. I feel like the directionality of those protrusions point toward the front of the model. It would be weird if that was the side and those were going out at an angle like that. Yeah. No, that's true.
Right? Like, think about the empty space under there and how what would the rest of that model look like if we're looking at the front of the model?
Yeah.
I don't know what that is.
No, that's true. As people said, it kind of looks kind of ogre-y. You know, like the little hooky things that are on the edge of like the thunder tusks and stuff like that. Like, it does have those angular features.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, boy, wouldn't that throw everyone for a loop if there was suddenly an ogre release?
An ogre, like maybe they have off hands, like they don't have hands, and instead of hands, they have like these little stumps that have grafted on weapons.
Sure, man. Why not?
This is like the little stump, the grafted on stump for a hand with like claws.
Yeah, sure. It's like the ogres who have fought and survived in the mortal realms, but they've had to constantly replace parts of themselves with just bolted on metal and detritus. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, people want to play that. That's compelling.
All right. I just sold myself.
Yes.
Well, there you go. New ogre faction. You heard it here first.
Vince's first ogre army.
Eventually, they'll find a destruction army I'm interested in, but there we go. All right. So that's the rumor engine.
Yep. So
something else happened this weekend, Tom. It was a big thing. You may have heard about it.
No, like that's not it, right? Like that, like, I mean, does it like is it Mortal Realms? Was there?
Yes. Something else may have happened, Tom. This happened right here, buddy. Look at that. Not only do I have them, I've got them here with me in the hotel. This is called road reading right here.
I don't know what that is.
These are the important
words. Don't make sense to me.
Chaos. That doesn't make sense to you? I think it does.
No.
These are the important books, Tom. This is the non-Space Marine. This is what's relevant. All the non-Space Marine action you can need. And Chaos. Very relevant stuff here. These are all the good books. All you need. It's really interesting. Like, we're going to have to do a show, kind of talking about what I'd love to do is a show about the demons. because you got a 1-to-1.
That's going to be kind of hard because I don't own any of those books.
Well, they do have them at your local store, but I can share the information. But my point is, Tom, the demons are interesting because they're 1-to-1, right?
Sure.
Like we can talk about other stuff. Like I'm not interested.
They're across AOS.
Yeah, exactly. Like looking at them because they're the interesting thing to me about this. So I've read all 4 of the demon armies.
It's the Slaanesh ruins. The interesting thing is Slaanesh.
Well, yes and no. I actually quite like all of them. Let me say this. I'm not interested in comparing like Stormcast to Space Marines or something dumb like that. That, like, jokes aside about the similarity of those, the look of those things, they're very different and they have very different actions in the table and they play very differently and all that kind of stuff. But the demons are the demons and they act more or less the same in both games, right? It's not like suddenly in 40K the demons gain a bunch of shooting attacks, right, or something like that. They're still a largely melee-driven force that uses the same weapons, the same models, the same everything in both games. And so it's an interesting point of comparison to me because this has the benefit of being written a year, year and a half, 2 years, some period of time like that later with sort of the ability of hindsight behind it, right? And I will say that the way the demons work in here feels much, much more cohesive right out of the gate. All of the units feel really, really good. Like I played a game last Saturday, the day it came out. Played a multiplayer game. I ran Slaanesh demons versus Death Guard and Orcs. There were like 3 of us. It was everybody ran for themselves because I do multiplayer for everything. And it felt great. Like Slaanesh's redesign in here is fantastic. Most of this I would love to just backport. I think you would very much love Nurgle, Tom. Let me just say that. Nurgle's pretty tough. Out of the box, you're talking about like a 5-up, 5-up. So, just automatically they walk around with those invulnerable saves on. So I know you love the stacking 5-ups, Tom. That's your particular thing. So we'll probably do a breakdown of that because I think it would be an interesting point of discussion between the two in the future. That's what I'll say.
I don't know about that.
Oh my God. Well, when Tom's coming to visit me on Saturday, so don't worry. I'll make sure he has all the books to look over.
We'll see about that.
So, all right, good. I agree. We'll see. But anyway, it was it's good stuff. I will say I'm very excited. Overall, had a fantastic game. I will also say that I did figure out something that I don't want to use the points in this game, like the points. I looked in the point tables and I was like, nope, too much. Like AOS has spoiled me. So I was like, oh yeah, sure. Battle power or whatever it's called, just the power rating. I was like, yes, that's my home. Now we're in the right place. Just paying per unit of these guys. Great. We did that. We did a game just solely with power rating. And you know what? It came down to the last turn and it was a 1-point differential. Like in the scenario we were playing, yep. You accrued, victory points. It ended with I won it. Slaanesh won. That's right. Slaanesh won something, and it was like 7 to 6 to 6, and I got the last point in the last turn. It was super close, and we all just ran the same amount of power rating, and it was fine. So there you go. I mean, I'm sure for like some kind of hard edge tournament, it's not accurate enough, but for a friendly game at home, yeah, it was fine. More than fine.
Cool.
Very comfortable. All right, so
you're trying to get me to spend money. I know what you're doing.
It's a $20 book, Tom. Let's wheel it back a bit, okay? You've already got the freaking demon army. I'm not asking you to buy a new force. Get out of here. Slow your roll. I didn't say run out and buy Chaos Space Marines or something. Come on now.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't wait till I show you the points and you start list building. That's what's going to do it right there. That's what'll crack your resolve. When you start having to play with like weapon kit outs when Tom gets going with like trying to squeeze each little unit and all the weapon kits and which one is the right way to arm it? This one model can have this one thing. your brain will just be off to the races. I already know how to break you.
This is a problem. I have to be honest.
Call me Ivan Drago, buddy, because I must break you. Okay, that's all I'm saying.
Like I'm already getting messages from people, or like people like tagging me in Twitter, and they're like, "Does anybody know a person like Warhammer Weekly Tom that can do list building for 40K?" And I'm like, no, stop tagging me in these things. Find somebody else.
First off, don't stop tagging him in those things. Second off, just give a few weeks. We'll get him there. Don't worry. All right. So anyway, were there any other news items we had? I think we might have hit everything there.
No, I think it's good.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a quiet week. Oh, I did see another confirmation, by the way, that we're going to get a Age of Sigmar Nurgle release. Speaking of Nurgle, this is one of the things that got me thinking about it.
Really?
I saw, another rumor surfaced of of upcoming in July of a Nurgle faction. I've actually seen it twice, so from two different sources. Yeah. So I don't know what we're talking about. No one has had any details of whether we'll actually get any kits. Like, will there be something equivalent to like new beasts or something like that? Or are we just talking about like a battle tome? You know, basically like what happened with the Blades of Corn, like that there would just suddenly be a Rotbringers of Nurgle, I guess probably is what they'd call it, or I don't know.
No, it would be Children of Nurgle.
Oh yeah, you're probably right. Yep. Yeah, you're right. So, but you know, I don't have any details on that, but I heard it. So I saw again two more pretty reliable-ish rumors. I'll put an ish on the end of that because all this stuff is always up in the air. That we're going to get the Nurgle book. The current rumor is like end of July, something like that. So.
Well, that'll be a problem. That'll be a problem for my KO army if that drops in July.
Well, not if it doesn't have new models, right? If it only is the book, you'll be safe. If they release new models, your dwarves are sunk. They're in trouble.
But it changes my lists. Like sure. That's the problem, is that it changes lists. Like I was already trying to entertain a way to get a second block of 28 Chaos Warriors in my Plague Dutch Dwarf band.
I don't know what to tell you, man. There you go.
Okay. I think that's the news.
All right. So let's talk about some picks of the week, man. What do you got? What is your pick of the week, Tom? Do you have one?
I do. It's something that's atypical. I don't normally do this, but I'm going to promote a game.
Okay.
So to give some context, one of the reasons why we were running late tonight is that I was a part of a seminar at an academic conference that I'm attending on a panel about ethics in gaming and how using gaming to to engage and provoke ethical dialogue. And one of the games that we actually played and demonstrated how this might work. This is less wargaming and more role playing, but it was a game called Doggie Dog. It was done on Kickstarter back in 2012. It's won a number of awards, and it's available and it's fairly cheap. And so it is an exploration. So if you really want some I don't know, a couple hours with some friends of really awkward conversation and explorations of power and imperialism, it is the game for you. Don't play it with people you're not comfortable with, is what I would say. But it would be something that's worth exploring if people, for those that have that kind of, those kind of concerns or wanting to explore those kind of concepts of power and exploitation and stuff like that. So.
That sounds cool.
Huh?
I told you recently that I played along a similar line. I played I don't think it's as serious. This is a little more jokey, but I played a great card style game called Secret Hitler. That was sort of It's all about playing members of the German Parliament in 1932 or something. It's pretty awesome. So yeah, I get that. I'll check it out. I like a good game like that. I'm
going to warn you, it's really awkward. There are some, because some of the rules are actually tap into real life.
Sure.
And so like, it's just like when you sit down, agree to play it before surveying how everything works. You know, like to come up with a community agreement to embark on this journey together, because it's going to feel frustrating or awkward at times, is what I would say.
You're saying don't just get it out one night and spring it on your friends and be like, this is what we're playing. Yes, I know none of you know what I'm talking about. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that. Exactly. That would be a problem.
Gotcha. All right, fair enough. Anyways. My pick of the week is from something I often direct people to, but slightly different than often. And that is a while back, I don't remember how long ago, I had mentioned on Volomir, they're doing the tale of, like, it started out as, I think, 8 warlords, and then it became 9, and now then it was 12, and now it's 12 13. Plus 1. Yeah, it's 13, yeah. They just keep getting more and more people participating in this, and it's amazing, the armies that they have in there. Particularly what I want to direct everybody to is something that I didn't get to read the article until I saw Jeff Egan had tweeted about it and talked about the Feral Orc versions in there. And they are pretty awesome, I have got to say. So if you're down for some Savage Orcs, if that's been your jam, you should be checking out this army that this particular the one of the 13 warlords is putting together. I don't remember which one it was. I apologize, but it's pretty fantastic. So I'll throw the link down there to the article. It's really great. So there you go. That is my pick, and you're still on mute. There you go. So we're both on the road, Tom. So neither of us are getting any hobby done right now. But what were you working on before you went?
I went home this weekend. To my parents' home in Lima, the home of my childhood. My parents lived there for 32 years, and I got to pack up my toys. And I had a lot of toys. Like, we filled up an entire trailer of toys, like 6 boxes, like huge boxes of GI Joes, full aircraft carrier, Terrordrome, like the whole gig. Like 4 boxes of He-Man, like all the castles. Found a bunch of old gaming stuff. Found a part of a Mordheim wall. My old Mordheim measuring sticks. All of it. Like, found an old Dark World temple thing that's totally getting turned into a real terrain piece. Like, I'm like, oh, saving this. This is going in the special pile. So
did you find any of your old models from your original warbands back in '99?
No, I've kept all this. Like, I've had those since then. Yeah, I found a Chaos Archer from Battle Masters. I found an extra Battle Masters mat. Like, I was just finding stuff all over the place. Like, it was just a magical time this last weekend of just finding just junk. I found literally boxes full of character sheets of not only my own but all of our gaming groups character sheets, stuff from our Rifts games, and so it was just this walk down memory lane, all of it obviously combat eliminating, and something I knew that was there, which was the sign to our old game store that Vince used to work at when he was a teenager. When it closed down, like, a bunch of people moved out of town, including Vince, and they just threw away the sign to the store in like on the side of the building. So I stole it and I stuck it in my basement. And it's been 20 years since that happened. And so that was down there, like that 4 by 8 foot sign or whatever it is, 4 by 6. And it's very clear.
Like finish it and turn it into a Warhammer table. That's what I should do with it.
Not a Warhammer.
It's the right size.
Yeah, it totally is. And so I'm dropping that off at your house.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm sure my wife is going to be super thrilled about this one when you pull in, because I haven't warned her.
It's going to be amazing.
So, yeah, no, that's very fun. Yes, the second you're referring to, the second best job I ever had, where I worked like 35 hours a week, 6 days a week, or something like that, and got paid $50 a week under the table. Yes, and it was like the second best job ever, because all I did is sit around and play Magic with all my best friends all day, and then D&D and such. So yeah,
or Risk,
pretty solid. Or Risk, yeah, sure, a lot of different games, but yes. So for me, before I left, I had to leave at the beginning of the week, but I finished up that my unit entry for Gen Con, which I was happy about, what I was working on last week. And I spent the rest of the weekend very fastidiously putting together my Knight Titan. So I was, I'm very excited about this. It is a great kit. Oh my God, it's such a good kit, dude. I'm not even joking. Like, first of all the extra bits you get.
Yeah.
From all the different weapon loadouts and such. Because there's all sorts of different things that go on their heads, and their arms can be all different and stuff like that. Different heads, different helms. I want to figure out what I can do with all the bits and stuff like that. You could probably build some fun stuff. But putting together this, he'll be in sub-assemblies, so I can paint him. But yeah, I got him, picked him up. When I picked up all the, when I picked up all this stuff at the store, I went ahead and picked up the Knight Titan as well. And special shout out to Phalanx, one of the viewers from last week's show, when I asked about photos. So first of all, Victor Case hit me with a ton of awesome links for inspiration. So thank you, Victor, for various great freehand on Knight Titans. But Phalanx then, said, well, I don't have any links, but he just sort of like spit out an idea. Like he was just dropping it. Like, call him Rumpelstiltskin, man, because he was spinning gold. And I was like, I'm stealing all of this. It was a fantastic idea. He had some great ideas for images. So I think that's what I'm going to settle on. It had to do with, various sort of Sisters of Battle iconography around like Bleeding Hearts and Thorns and sort of pseudo-religious iconography and stuff. So, which I dig all of that. I'm very, very excited to get back to him this weekend. He's on my desk, all sub-assembled, all ready to go. And so I'm looking forward to getting back there and putting some paint on that guy.
Can I do a 40K army with 3 of those?
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Like, it would depend on the size. What we play in our multiplayer games, like what we did last weekend, 2 of them would have been an army. In that size game we play in the multiplayer games, because obviously we don't, just as with AOS. I'm normally playing like much smaller games than most people's 2,000 point games.
Yep.
It's the same with 40K. When you've got like 3-4 players at the table, you can't all have massive armies. The games would just take forever. So we play smaller forces. But yes, 2 would be the army for our normal multiplayer game.
Christmas, I get it 5 into a 2K game.
Yeah, I mean, fully kitted out. It depends on which, Knight Titan you're talking about, but by the hard points, kitted, they're probably around 500, depending on the loadout you go with. They could be cheaper than that by a fair amount. They could probably get more expensive than that. I haven't really looked at the full range, but I mean, some of their weapons are very expensive. Some are not. So there you go. That's the best I can say, Tom. So
only painting 3 models is tempting.
And as I said, like, no, all joking aside, it is one of my favorite models I've ever put together. I had no idea the kit was of such quality. I get it now. I get why everybody's like getting those Knight Titans and putting them together. They're fantastic. It's a cool model. Yeah. So there you go. All right. So shall we pivot to some back to AOS, leave the world of the Grimdark behind, and pivot back to some AOS and talk about our feature this week, which is we're going to talk about the Skirmish expansion rules.
I don't know about any such project. No, I'm lying.
You think? Yeah, I think the audience might have caught on to your sarcasm, Tom. I know it was incredibly subtle. But yes, so Tom and I are working on a set of optional rules to add to Skirmish.
Yep. We announced it a week or 2 back.
Yep. And we're getting close to having our first draft done. Very clear expectation setting on this first draft. It will not be pretty. This is not anything finished. We're going to put out the raw in like a PDF form. So it'll be usable, right, and organized, but there's not going to be any art or anything like that for the first version. We want feedback more than anything. Yep. Play it if you can, but just any feedback is welcome. So there'll be a dedicated video to that. But I thought tonight we would take this chance to actually walk through what we're thinking so that everybody can kind of see what's coming, since I didn't know if we'd have another chance to do that as a full video later. So I thought we would just walk through this, Tom, in order and talk about kind of, hit the various elements that we're adding to.
Okay.
And kind of what we're planning. We can stay out of the weeds because like reading specific abilities probably isn't super interesting on the air as a show, but
Sure.
more talking about what we're actually doing.
Yep.
So I guess the first one to touch on is probably just composition, right?
Yeah.
And so the idea is that we're going to formalize some of the composition elements. There'll be more points to choose with. Go ahead.
Hold on. So one of the ideas is that we're kind of kicking around is that creating a series, so we want to have a bunch of these subsystems that we're about to talk about all operate as independent as possible. But we're also going to have some suites, some packages that bundle sets of these subsystems together into a larger system.
Yeah, good clarification.
When you begin talking about composition, that's presupposing a number of the subsystems. Like as soon as you begin messing with composition, it's assuming a larger framework.
Sure. So why don't you talk us through composition then? It's because I think you've got a clear idea of where you want to go with this.
Yeah. So the idea is that we've pulled it Yeah, so the idea with it was we wanted a feel for the base game that reflected a little bit of the Mordheim sensibilities. Okay, so right now, the base game, let's say, even if you started at 36 points instead of 25, you're going to generally afford one hero and some rank and flank troops or whatever, just a bunch of henchmen. So you have one hero and a bunch of dudes running around. You might have one elite model, maybe two, and then a bunch of minions. If you had really cheap heroes, you could have like some cheap heroes and a chariot and some minions or whatever. And we wanted to get back to the like Hero Hammer-esque, like Mordheim-esque distribution where you had a little bit more heroes, but you still had minions running around. Like you had other dudes running around. And so,
yeah, who are still doing the majority of the lifting,
yes.
Right? To be clear, like people are going to react very negatively to your comment of Hero Hammer, and I want to be very clear about that.
Yeah, like Mordheim-esque is what I want to more talk about.
Yeah,
like rather than Hero Hammer per se, because Mordheim generally had anywhere between 4 and 5 heroes, 4 to 6, and we're not going that far. But, our aim right now is something around 3 heroes in your warband. Like that would be the aim in the top end right now, right. Somewhere around there. And so we would do this by having a fairly high point value cap that you're going to build from, maybe something like 100 points or so. But it would also include a model cap on the whole warband. And so what it would prevent is that people buying like a couple heroes and then like a bunch of one like point models or whatever.
You can't just spam out like 75 goblins.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're experimenting with some of the composition assumptions that Skirmish does. Because one thing that Skirmish does is it says like you buy your warband and you only add to it. And so with composition, we're changing one aspect, which is how composition might work initially. And then also the other assumption, which is you only ever add. Another subsystem in that is the potential to both add or potentially lose models.
Yeah, and what I want to drive home when I say that, because it's very funny, the response to the idea of death.
Yep.
All of these systems are meant to be, like we said a couple times, but I'm going to drill it home again. Modular. You can use the individual things that you want or not. It's about expanding the game in a way that you find favorable. With the heroes, the other thing I really wanted to do is there have been other skirmish games that have played around with the idea of roles of heroes, that the heroes have a purpose in the warband. And if you think about this, it's a very natural thing, right? So Frostgrave, you have your wizard, and even in the normal warband, you have sort of your general, your warband leader. So there's already kind of this one default role. And so what we want to do is expand other roles from there And then that then lets you bundle in other subsystems if you want into this, where the heroes in these other operational roles can have skills that are naturally related to that role that they've been allocated to. Okay. So, for example, if you have an enforcer type, or something like that that's playing that role, that person has a very discrete set of skills, probably about killing people, right, or something like that. And so the idea is that those roles can be both guardrails and also guiding principles to define who the hero is and who they grow into, right? Because you want to, another thing we're going to talk about as we move on is the evolution of these heroes, that they do grow and change and advance. And even sometimes their negatives can make them advance, right? That's what I would say. Growth isn't always a positive, but
their psychoses.
Yeah, exactly. Their psychoses and injuries. When I talked about death in my sort of initial announcement video, I got a few, a few is the wrong way to say it. I got multiple strong responses on both sides of this. Okay. Yep. Where some people were like, yes, please, I want my people to be able to be injured in death. I loved that element of wartime. Okay, cool. You will be able to. And I had other people who were like, I hate death. I hate the idea. It puts you on makes your warband circle the drain and you fall behind. That can sometimes happen too. And if that overwhelms your enjoyment, then don't use those rules, right? And we're writing them so they're not, none of this is an inbuilt assumption of the sort of rules pack that we're putting together, right? Okay, so that's kind of high level on composition. Kind of related to this is the idea of we wanted to blow out like the command ability section and add additional sort of command ability selections for your general related to your alliance, right? Because obviously this is more driven by alliance than it is by individual subfaction. And so there are alliance-based command abilities, on tables that you'll be able to either, of course, as always, roll on or select.
Yep.
And, that'll let you vary up and customize your hero more sort of right out of the gate, right? I mean, command abilities are one of the stock currencies that we purposely made them all narratively driven and all very much aligned with what
the Grand Alliance.
What do I want to say? Like the themes, the philosophy. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for, of that Grand Alliance. Right.
Yeah. The color pie.
Chaos, the color pie. Yes. This has been something I've believed in for a while. Order wants to protect and work together and heal and stuff like that.
And preserve.
Whereas chaos and preserve. Yes. Whereas chaos wants to kill and assault and sacrifice its own for the death of others. Right. Those kinds of basic philosophies. So there you go. I don't know. Do you have any other thoughts on the command ability stuff?
No, just that these will be obviously optional systems that if you don't want to use their suggested list, if you don't want to use what's default on the character, this gives you another lever that you can pull that's available to your heroes in ways that they can grow. In advancement, there are ways to gain additional command abilities. Like that's in the default reward chart. And what this will do is give you another lever to pull, when you access those or when you roll that.
Yeah. And just to give a sort of idea of the kinds of things we're talking about here when I talk about like the aligned abilities. So for example, these aren't all necessarily just positive. A great example is something like Chaos's ability to the Chaos Commander's ability to incite frenzy. Increase the attacks of them and everybody around them, but then everybody's saves get much worse, right? And so the idea, of course, being that Chaos would often willingly trade offense or defense or something like that if it means killing more for the Dark Gods, that sort of thing. And they're all of these, like I said, they tend to be aligned to the Chaos Gods and that kind of thing. So there you go. All right, you want to talk about scenarios, both? The scenario pack.
Do you want to finish sort of talking about growth? Like, do you want to talk about character growth, or do you want to focus on the scenarios and terrain?
I want to move to scenarios because to me, growth is something different. Like
Okay.
the command abilities and the selection is more about the initial building, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And then, so that's sort of bundle one,
Yep.
right? If you will, right? These subsystems. Bundle two, to me, is the scenarios and the additional scenario rules.
Mhm.
So, you know, first things first, the simplest and most obvious is we're going to add a bunch of scenarios, and they're going to be multiplayer ready.
Mhm. Not
Okay,
all of them will be multiplayer,
but many of them will.
Yeah.
Yes. And they can, like, most of them will have a setting that they can be played with.
like 2 to 5
You know.
players, like, you know,
Exactly.
3 to 4.
Yep. The other thing that these scenarios will be is set, and this is really important to me. They'll be set in Shadespire, and so this is the first time we're going to touch on this, but it won't be the last.
Mm-hmm.
That since the skirmish game takes place in Shadespire, we're drawing on the narrative elements of the book to define things like the scenarios, and eventually we'll come back to this, and things like the treasure exploration, right? Those elements of the game that should feel like they're sitting in this city. Now, could you scratch out the serial numbers and play in some other part of the Mortal Realms or some other abandoned city? Sure. Of course. But to me, it's important that these things have a sort of narrative grokkability, right? Mm-hmm. Like you actually are in Shadespire in a real way. The scenarios are being informed by what you're seeing, the threats that are on the table, because certainly there are scenarios where there are other things on the table that aren't your warbands.
Yep.
Let's just start there. Those things and the potential pitfalls and hazards and dangers and all of that be aligned with what you would expect to see in Shadespire, as per what we saw in the book. And what I'll say is that Skirmish book actually had some really decent fluff.
Yeah.
Talked about it way back in the beginning when Tyler did his review of the fluff of the book. But there really is some very cool ideas in there. I remember when we were scheming up, some treasure tables, Tom was just like reading through the book out loud to me because I didn't have the book at that moment. And I'm like, so he read a couple paragraphs and I was like, I've got 8 good ideas for what we can do for treasure and exploration based on what you just read.
Yep.
I mean, it's really jam-packed.
Yeah. And so how that would manifest basically is that just in a very simple, brief type of way, is that scenarios will have a range of possible locations within the city they may be occurring in.
Yep.
And where those locations are, where you've decided that you are exploring, or where that you've decided this event is happening in, will have a trickle-down effect into what that looks like on the battlefield potentially, for like conditions and other things like that. And then it could also then bleed into the after game exploration resolution.
Right. Exactly. So the scenarios won't be they're not all necessarily tied to one specific sector of the city.
Sure.
Like we got the sectors in the fluff area of the book. They're usually either closely tied to a few. And so you then make a choice at the very beginning that's going to flow throughout, right? So, one of my favorites being the Thanatological Gardens.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great one.
Yep.
So, if you choose to play in the Thanatological Gardens, then, if you're playing in a scenario that can operate there, then what's going to happen is some of the hazards and the environment is going to look more wild and natural, right, than if you were playing in the normal dense sort of urban environment of the rest of Shadespire. And when you go to roll for explorations, you'll be finding a lot more like organic or natural or plant-based or whatever you want to say type of stuff.
Things you would find in a Thanatological Garden as opposed to, the Scrimshaw Mines or whatever they were.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Is that really what it was? Was it Scrimshaw? I don't know. I don't have it in front of me. I haven't scrolled to that part of it. I have it up over here on my screen beside the window I'm watching this on. But yes, exactly. The other thing we're adding as
the Scrimshaw Mines, by the way.
There you go. All right.
That was one of the locations.
That's funny. The other thing that is being added as part of this is some new rules in scenarios, both special rules for things you can run into For example, very simple stuff like weather, right? Buildings being on fire, nighttime and darkness, trapped buildings, right? All that sort of stuff. Those are all special rules that can occur in the scenario.
And there's a little bit more agency as well. And what I mean by that is like there are rules for like we've modified some of the rules for cover and for hiding, and for some of the things like that.
Yeah, jumping, falling, cover, hiding. And again, as I said, all of this is meant to be like, so we have these optional rules in here for climbing, jumping, falling, cover, and hiding, right? But you could easily not use any of that. If you don't want that level of granular detail, great. Don't use that subsystem, right? At all. Just don't pick those up.
Yeah, ignore it. Treat it like those pages don't exist, and your game will play normally.
Right. You'll just use the normal AOS movement rules. And when you want to go up the side of a building, you just move up the side of a building.
Yep.
Done. And that's fine. Who cares? Play the way you want. But if you're looking for that level of thing where you could climb and fall and bust your head open, well, then you've got that option too. If you're the type of person like me who loves people falling off buildings to their death, which is like maybe one of my favorite things in the world, is when models fall off high buildings and die. Hey, then don't worry, you're gonna have that there for you. So, yeah. Any other thoughts you had on the scenarios?
We want there to be a diversity so that people don't get bored playing the same thing.
Yes. Yeah, I'll also say these are all one difference between like the scenarios that we're creating and the scenarios that are in the base book is these aren't necessarily narratively connected.
Yes,
they are narratively
they weren't necessarily sequenced to one another.
There you go. That's exactly what I mean. They're all narratively driven and rooted in the story of the city, but they're completely modular, right? Like you can play them in any order, in any way you want, randomly, etc. So the idea, you don't have to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Easy pickup game. Find the one you like that looks fun, or roll it out and go to town. Okay, so now let's talk about some sort of advancement, right? The campaign elements. To me, these are really the core RPG elements that like Mordheim added that we're putting optionally back in. So if you want to see advancement of your heroes really specifically, everybody advances, but at the same time, I really have a hard belief that the mooks, the minions, the henchmen, they should have a way to advance, but it should be dead drop, simple, and minimal.
Yes, you shouldn't be tracking the damage that every single model is doing.
Right. Or layering on special rules or whatever.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's just going to get overwhelming too fast.
So,
you're going to forget.
So was this Spire Guard the one with the +1 attack, or was this Spire Guard the one with the whatever?
Yep. It just becomes like way too overcomplicated too fast. So when it comes to the mook advancement, or whatever you want to call them, the henchmen, your normal unit advancement, they will advance in a sort of as a unit, and the advancement will be very limited and very simple and very intensive. So there's a difference in game design. You talk about like how much memory it takes to adapt to a change. If a change or an addition requires it to be constantly kept in your mind. For example, here's one that would. If the henchman could roll into a special rule that every time they rolled a 6 on an armor save, then roll an additional dice, and on a 4-up, they deal a mortal wound back to the person that did the original damage to them. Right? Okay. That's memory intensive because I have to remember that the thing has that ability, right?
And that
as opposed to something.
Not only that it has it, but that it has it, what it triggers on, and what it does.
Yes. Whereas the unit rerolls 1s to hit, right? Or something like that. or may now run and charge. Period. That's just a thing they do now, right? It becomes an ingrained part of it. There's no trigger to it, other like I know rerolls want to have a trigger of rolling ones, but it's an always on feature, right? That you're completely
it's not conditional.
Right. So keeping those things simple and limited, like henchmen just only get so many upgrades, and it's a small number. So there you go. Where the advancement really lies, I think, is in the heroes, right?
Yep.
And because to me, heroes are heroes for a reason. They're what the story tends to be about. They're the protagonists you have, which again is why roles are important to me, because I think that helps bring them to life.
Yep.
When they're a hero who's doing a specific thing in the city, who has a particular job in your warband. To me, a lot of this is about those RPG elements of imagining their narrative. And so I think that those all help define that. The first thing we'll talk about is injury. If your hero if they get knocked down, you may never really keep them down, but they might not be all better when they get up.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to jump in and speak to the critical, one of the big critiques when you initially pitched this was so people were reacting super negatively to death. And even to injury. And what I would say is that that's one of the reasons why it's so significant to do the Mordheim-esque composition rules. Because if you have a single hero that you can afford and they get crippled or killed, that's an entirely different ballpark than if you have 3 heroes and one of them takes a leg wound.
Sure. No, that's fair.
And so that's part of why, you could use the death rules independently, but the problem is that it's going to have a much more dramatic impact on a warband's composition if you're not playing with a setup that's allowing or encouraging multiple heroes.
Yes, and what I'll say is that, critical to understand here is the death factor is actually granularly modular. What I mean by that is you can use the injury system without using permadeath. Let's just call it permadeath. Okay.
Yeah.
Because that'll, for our old school MMOers out there in the you know what I'm referencing. You can use the injury. What's that?
Hardcore mode.
Hardcore mode, yes. Injury without ever invoking death. Death is a setting you turn on or off.
Yep.
Okay. As part of the campaign. Either you decide at the beginning of the campaign or that game or whatever, we're going to use death or we're not. Cool. That's fine. The other thing about the injuries that is, and I really wanted to, if you went back and looked at the Mordheim charts when we did that, there were both mental and physical injuries, and I wanted to preserve that here as well, because I love the idea of warriors being mentally scarred. That also because then you don't always. Some people feel really compelled to change the model, like if you get an arm cut off, they feel compelled to change the model. I don't want people having to rip things off their models all the time. That seems problematic if you're one of those people. I've never cared. But the point is that not all injuries show on the outside, right? Some of the worst ones are all upstairs. So there's a host of great mental injuries that can be visited upon your heroes as a result of their traumatic experiences in the city. They can go mad. They can become hardened. They can become a sadist. There's all sorts of great options. So there you go. I am a particular fan of schizophrenia. I think that's a particular fun one. I tried to base all of these in somewhat fantasticalized. There you go. Fantasticalized mental conditions. Obviously, I'm not trying to make light of any serious mental condition. It's just rooted in that stuff. So there you go. Okay. So we've got injuries. We talked about advancement of henchmen. You want to talk about advancement of heroes? Because there's a couple different elements in that.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So for advancement of heroes.
You do it. Talk about it, Tom.
So we talked about the idea of the upgrading of units to veteran or regiment around renowned status and gaining, like for your henchmen, gaining some benefits. But for heroes, we wanted it to be more granular, and be able to get into kind of a little bit more kind of nitty-gritty opportunity. And so for those that are familiar with our Mordheim rewrite that we did right after the launch of AOS, using the AOS rules, we pulled a very similar chart in for our hero advancement. And, that'll grant various benefits to their, their attacks or their different stuff, different, whether it be stats. Sometimes it's going to be skill-based. And so you'll gain skills as a possibility. Now you would question, like, how am I going to gain these benefits? And basically they're going to come from, you're going to gain experience for surviving encounters or completing secondary objectives in the encounter. These secondary objectives could manifest as parts of the scenarios themselves. If you're using the scheme, like alternate system, because we're potentially going to have a scheme system as well, subsystem as well, playing on kind of the schemes that we had written for NashCon, that could potentially also play into experience that heroes score. If they are the ones who complete the scheme or whatever. And so then that adds another element of like who you want actually doing the thing to grant benefit. But heroes are going to gain, they're going to level up. They'll have a somewhat variable experience amount that they level up, and it'll be based on like a certain aspect of maybe how tough the hero is. And heroes will basically have a max right now. We're envisioning 5 levels of, kind of 5 levels of experience, 5 levels, like 5 tiers of advancement. So there is an upper ceiling on how well, a hero can, how
much they can grow.
How much they can grow. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah, because you don't want it to go to the point where it just gets completely away, right? And somebody...
Yes. But it'll still be enough that you can get probably 20 or 30 games under your belt before you hit that ceiling. Like, so you can get a significant amount of kind of experience into this. And this is individual model growth. This has nothing to do with the warband as a whole. Again, we're still focusing right now on the individual model advancement or unit advancement. And so there'll be a set of skills. I'd mentioned skills potentially in that advancement chart. There'll be basically 4 sets of skills. There will be 1 set of skill for every one of the roles. There are 3 different, like we talked about, 3 different heroes. There are 3 different roles that are filled within a warband. So there'll be a skill set that'll be associated with each of those, and then there will be a 4th skill set that'll be a universal skill set. And anybody from any of the categories can choose from the universal skill set. So that's how we're envisioning that working right now.
And again, when you think about this, it's just, again, it's that RPG element. It's more customization. These skills realistically equate to special abilities. I mean, we're all familiar with how special abilities on War Scrolls work, right? Like, none of this should be blowing anyone's mind at this point. It's all pretty straightforward stuff. Because every War Scroll... every War Scroll ever has special abilities. So
and these are mechanics that are already kind of default rolled out within the game. It's just we're now rolling them out and systematizing them for Skirmish. And there'll be some other interesting kind of advancement opportunities. Like sometimes when you are a powerful hero, you draw attention that you don't want. Maybe of the dark gods. Maybe they like what they see. Want to gift you with.
They're always watching. They're
always watching. Yeah. So that would be individual.
So then I think the next thing to talk about is sort of exploration and treasure. And again, this flows through, if you're using the scenario settings, it flows directly through to here for where you decided to play in the city. If you're not, then you would just, decide beforehand.
No, so can we, I want to put a pin on this, that this is independent of the result chart.
What are you pointing at?
So you said the end of you talked about on the other side of the scenario. And you
yes, you're saying like you're saying the result chart that's in the regular skirmish system,
yes,
right?
like we're not doing away with that. We're not rewriting that. That's a part of advancement. So that is all sticking. But depending upon where you were actually, where this event was taking place, you may find other stuff in the area. You may find other interesting encounters with folks who dwell or exploring in that area.
Right. Exactly. Like, so we mentioned the Thanatological Gardens earlier.
Yep.
Right. So if you're playing in a scenario set in the Thanatological Gardens, then when it comes time to explore after the battle, you're going to roll appropriate. You're going to roll on the Thanatological Gardens table. Right. And what you find is all going to be reflective of expect to find in such a weird death garden in an abandoned city in Shyish or whatever. So, for example, you might find nothing. Since this is in addition to the base table, you may just find a sand-choked plot where the desert has reclaimed some part of the garden and nothing else special happens, right? Or alternatively, you may find a massive hedge maze that you then do a little dice game on to try to work your way to the center to, you know, find the treasure that's hidden at the middle of it. You might find like the Death Bloom, which is like a super duper crazy poisonous flower that you can then harvest and, you know, use in the next battle, that kind of thing. So some of these might be, you find expendable stuff. Some of them might point you toward the treasure table because you find some sweet loots. Some of them might just be interesting encounters, as he mentioned. I'm really big on making the city feel real by being able to run into other inhabitants, be they, and not all of them dangerous, although some of them are. Some of them may want to fight you, kill you, etc. But some of them are just other interesting people you meet in this weird, abandoned, rich city. You know, a great example is in the table you can run into a mad necromancer with his marbles and has come here because it's, you know, of what the city is. And depending on a set of events, you may be able, he may either run away or trade with you or join you, even if you're not in the death faction. And suddenly you may have a necromancer joined up with your order faction if you want. And he can bring little skeletons and zombies with him. Just fun stuff like that. To see warbands evolve organically in an interesting way, I think is one of the chief goals of this, right? To create really interesting situations as you explore around the city and make it feel like what you're finding on these explorations is what you would expect to find because you're exploring that part of the city. So,
and
yeah.
what are the parts of the city that we've settled on as areas that you can explore as part of this?
Yeah. So there are, we based it on the elements that they outline in the skirmish book. So you have the Thanatological Gardens, the Grand Spire, which is like the noble royal part of the city, the Haunting Grounds, which is a big giant cemetery, the Scrimshaw Mines, which is where they mined the
dark ore.
The shade glass, the dark ore that they used to make the shade glass or whatever. And then the Shattered Court, which is sort of the poor people section of town, I guess is what I would call it. Peasant / market district that got completely sort of ravaged and destroyed by Nagash's wrath. Right? So those are your areas of the city. And obviously what you find if you're exploring sort of the noble grand area where all of the cataphragms, I guess that's how you pronounce that, lived is going to be much different than if you're exploring the mines. You know, that quite obviously those have different results. But not necessarily better or worse. Like these are all fairly, they all have, the goal is not to make any one of these places necessarily better or anything like that. They all should have interesting and varied options that are all equally compelling. That's the goal.
Yep, and they'll have it'll be a bell curve distribution ideally on the rewards, such that like there'll be some more common middle options and then some less common, you know, peripheral things.
Exactly. You know, it's more or less the distribution you would expect. If every time you rolled, you ran into some like hyper special thing, it would start getting weird. Like the story I always tell related to this is a D&D story, but it's relevant given we're talking about RPG elements and the use of random encounter tables. There was a time when I was playing under a DM who was using the random encounter tables in an adventure, and he just rolled it straight, and whatever he rolled, that's what we met. And we were in Eberron and walking along a nice, normal, temperate road, like you're walking along a road in Ohio, and we got attacked by a mummy. And I'm like, well, this is weird. We're not in a desert, and yet here's a mummy attacking us. So we killed the mummy and walked on. And a day later, he rolled on the same table because we were still in the same area, and he rolled a mummy again. And so the same mummy attacked us twice. And I'm like, this feels like it should be a story, right? Like, if you like, what is going on here?
This is
that mummies are wandering around this temperate forest. But if you start running into weird things like that too often, then it behooves a narrative explanation. Otherwise, it feels weird, is the point, right? So, and then obviously one of the results of this can be treasure. And so the treasure list, you want to talk about how we've created the treasure list, like the conceit of the thing?
Yeah, so we wanted a list that was both familiar, and then also unique and expanded. And so we took in an effort to do as little work as possible. I'm just going to call it like it is. In searching to do as little work as possible while at the same time reflect as much continuity as possible with the world. What we've done is we've pulled in the treasure chart from both what's been provided in Skirmish, as well as, if you'll notice in Skirmish, when you're building your generals, you can actually build out using items that are from the you can use from the Grand Alliance book in the composition rules. And so we pulled in a number of those items from the Grand Alliance books that would be appropriate in this setting. And the reality is that, like, you
mean the General's Handbook Alliances? Is that what you're
What did I say? What did I say?
You said the Alliance books, which people are going to think you mean Grand Alliance Order.
No.
We mean the Alliance artifacts in the General's Handbook.
Yeah, the Alliance artifacts in the General's Handbook. Sorry, the lack of sleep is catching up with me. And so so we pulled in those items, and because the reality is that, like, as people are exploring, like, they're likely to be dying, and so if you're finding random items, like, it would make sense that you're finding stuff from the same kind of that range of composition. So even if you can't, like, find or even if you can't start with a battle brew, like, there's a chance that you could roll into one.
Sure. And then at the same time, obviously, it was also important to have unique relics of Shadespire itself on this table. So then a portion of the exploration of the table is split up between what I would call, like, I'll call them interesting items of Shadespire and legendary items of Shadespire, right? So there are sort of two sections to this table, one of which has, just cool stuff. The goal is to make each of these narratively interesting or something like that. And then you've got another section that is truly like these unique legendary items that are tucked away within Shadespire, which are realistically the reason people are coming here for this town, right? Because this town is ancient. Yeah, this town is supposed to be fantastically wealthy because Nagash showed up and just killed everybody who lived here in a day, right? So nobody fled with any of their stuff. And this city was just unbelievably wealthy at its height, right? So they should have cool stuff hidden around. And that's the idea here, is that you can, when using those treasure tables, roll into those, what we'll call legendary items. Yeah. So there you go. Them's the stuff. I think we've covered all the elements of it. Is there anything I'm not thinking of?
Items. Like I said, we haven't fully fleshed it out, but we're going to be pulling in schemes as well. And so there should be a number of moving parts between the scenarios and the secondary objectives in the scenarios and the schemes themselves that there should be a lot of cross incentives for how to pursue objectives and rewards and stuff like that.
Yep, exactly. So there you go. I'm looking forward to it. As I said, we'll put out the initial draft probably in the next week or two, depending on how much more I have to travel. That gets in the way sometimes. But other than that, it'll be a fairly simple PDF, and we would love all the feedback, and we hope people enjoy it. I look at it like another thing I look at right now is, we're in the time of 40K, right? Like, hey, let's be honest. It's so hot right now. It's like Hansel. It's super hot right now, and that's fine. So if you still have you want to get some AOS on, but maybe you want to do it fashion. If you're getting your matched play fix, playing 40K right now, maybe this is a fun, different way to attack it. And it's a way to have some interesting content come out that could be fun for people to play around with during the Sigmar releases, since we're in the cornucopia of 40K. So that's kind of my thought. There you go. Tom, any final thoughts from you on this?
It's going to be awesome. It's going to be the best thing ever. You clearly, sorry, I don't even have it in me to do like a Trump impersonation. Sure,
it will not be that. It will not be the best thing ever. Please disregard my compatriot. But we hope it is fun. To make something fun and interesting that you can play with. So there you go. That's it. I think we're both back at home next week. So we'll be back to our normal setting, normal guests, all that kind of thing.
Yep.
I'm sure, Tom's coming to visit me this weekend. I plan on having a game of 40K on this weekend.
We'll see.
So, we'll see what we can do to work on him. Don't worry. I'm just going to be we're just going to be standing behind him, just doing this the whole time. I'll be just flipping open to random pages. I'll be like, oh man, look at this. Look at this. What is this over here? Oh, the Great Unclean One. Wow, look how good he is here. He really is quite good. So, anywho,
it's so ridiculous because at my seminar tonight, like at the conference thing, somebody was like, yeah, wanting to do something like that, but most people don't they don't play some of these games. They play like Warhammer or something, and I was like, who would play that? And like one of the other guys looked at me that was like facilitating, and he was like, really? And I was like, oh yeah, well yeah, it's a pretty good game. Until we got to talking about 40K, and I'm like, 40K.
See, you don't you want to be cool for all your work friends, Tom?
Clearly. That's clearly what I strive to do.
Absolutely. All right. Well, as usual, I hope the quality of this was fine and the internet came through. Tom and I, it seemed clear, so hopefully it's good. But we apologize that we're both on the road and weren't able to do the full normal show. Hopefully we gave you some good content, as always, to be in the background, and that you got some miniatures painted, fought a little of the war against the gray. We appreciate you watching. Look forward to you joining us, and as always, we'll see you next Wednesday.